All right, so let's just cut the crap and dive headfirst into this Formula One history thing.
That's good to me.
I mean, everyone knows it's fast cars and
Mhm.
insane speeds and all that, but like, where did it all begin?
Yeah.
We've got articles, research, hell, even some dusty-ass racing memoirs we dug up for this.
Wow.
The mission here is how the hell did F1 go from these like scrappy underdog garages to this billion-dollar spectacle
Right.
where the car like seems to matter more than the driver these days? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Like, what's the story behind that?
Well, it's a wild ride, that's for sure.
I bet it is.
And you're right, the evolution of the sport has led to this crazy technological arms race
For sure.
where the teams with the most money often have the upper hand. But to really understand how we got here,
Yeah.
we need to go back to the roots of F1, the wild early years after World War II.
Okay, so back in the day, things were a bit more like DIY, right?
DIY is an understatement.
Really?
Imagine a world still recovering from a war, and you got these guys, these absolute madmen. They're cobbling together cars from whatever they could find.
Wow.
Take the Alfa Romeo 158, for example. They nicknamed it the Alfetta.
The Alfetta, okay.
This thing had a supercharged engine that churned out like 420 bhp, but it guzzled fuel like a thirsty bastard.
Yeah, those old engines were not exactly known for their fuel efficiency, were they?
No, not at all.
And those cars, they were death traps on wheels, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No seat belts, no fancy safety features, just pure balls to the wall racing.
Sounds fucking mental.
Drivers like Juan Manuel Fangio and Alberto Ascari,
Legends.
legends of the sport, yeah,
Yeah.
risking their lives every time they stepped into those machines.
Jeez.
And the races themselves were brutal,
I bet they were.
often covering distances of over 500 kilometers,
What?
3 times longer than a modern Grand Prix.
Damn, that's like running a marathon while wrestling a pissed-off lion.
Yeah,
Talk about endurance.
it was a different breed back then.
But I'm guessing things started to change when the Brits decided to shake things up a bit.
You bet. The British invasion of Formula One in the late 1950s, that was a game changer.
Really?
These small, independent British teams, often called garagistes, they brought a new level of ingenuity to the sport.
Garagistes.
Yeah, like they were working out of their garages.
It's like a fuck you attitude.
Exactly. They were the underdogs, the scrappy upstarts who weren't afraid to challenge the big boys, like Ferrari and Maserati.
So what was their secret weapon?
Well, their weapon was innovation.
Innovation, okay.
Before the British invasion, Formula One cars were all front engine.
Makes sense.
But then, in 1958, this small British team called Cooper came along.
Cooper? Okay.
They unveiled a car with a radical new design, a mid-engined layout.
Whoa, hold on. A mid-engine car, that was like unheard of back then, right?
It was a total game changer. The mid-engine design gave the Cooper car superior agility
Right.
and cornering speed.
Gotcha.
And it shocked the world by winning the Argentine Grand Prix.
No way.
Yeah.
So they beat the big boys with this crazy new design.
They did. It was a David versus Goliath moment.
Wow.
It proved that brains could often outsmart brute force and big budgets.
So these British garagistes basically flipped the script on Formula One, huh?
Exactly.
Showing that you didn't need a Ferrari-sized bank account to win races.
Right.
They brought the innovation, the guts, and the underdog spirit. Fucking brilliant.
And their impact is still felt today.
Really?
The mid-engine layout became the standard in Formula One, and it all started with those scrappy Brits.
That's amazing. So the Brits were rocking the boat with their mid-engined marvels.
They were.
But how did they keep up with the big boys in terms of engine power?
That's where another stroke of genius comes in. The Ford Cosworth DFV engine.
What?
The DFV engine. This bad boy was designed by Keith Duckworth.
Okay.
A brilliant engineer who somehow managed to create an engine that was relatively cheap, incredibly reliable, and pumped out an impressive amount of power.
Wait, hold up. Cheap and powerful. That's like finding a unicorn that shits gold. How the hell did they pull that off?
The DFV engine was a masterpiece of engineering. It was a compact and lightweight V8 that used readily available components, which kept costs down.
Right.
But it also produced around 400 bhp,
Damn.
which was more than enough to make those mid-engine British cars fly.
So this DFE engine was like the equalizer,
Exactly.
allowing the smaller teams to punch above their weight and take on the giants of the sport.
Precisely. The DFV became the engine of choice for many British teams, including Lotus, Brabham, and Tyrrell.
Wow.
It powered countless victories and championships, and it's considered one of the most successful engines in Formula One history.
Okay, so we've got the Brits shaking things up with their mid-engine designs and this legendary DFE engine.
Yep.
But surely Ferrari wasn't just sitting back watching their empire crumble, were they?
Of course not.
I didn't think so.
Ferrari, under the leadership of the legendary Enzo Ferrari, was never one to back down from a challenge.
That's right.
They countered the British invasion with their own innovations,
Such as
including their powerful and sonorous flat 12 engine.
a flat 12.
Yeah, a unique and fascinating engine.
Sounds like a beast.
It was. Known for its smooth power delivery and its ability to rev to incredible heights.
Nice.
It was a complex and expensive engine to build,
Okay.
but it gave Ferrari a distinctive edge. Their 312B3, powered by this flat 12, was a formidable competitor in the early 1970s.
Okay, so we've got a real battle brewing here.
Oh, yeah.
The Brits with their nimble mid-engine cars and the DFE engine, and Ferrari with their raw power and that screaming flat 12. This is where shit starts to get really interesting, Rick.
Absolutely. The 1960s and 1970s were a period of rapid innovation in Formula One. The cars were getting faster, the technology was advancing, and the stakes were getting higher.
Right.
But it was also a time of great danger,
Yeah, I was about to say, those old races were notorious for their lack of safety features.
with safety concerns becoming increasingly prominent, yeah.
It's a miracle more drivers didn't end up as roadkill.
Sadly, there were many tragic accidents during this era.
Right.
Drivers were pushing the limits of both man and machine, and the consequences were often devastating.
Yeah, that's heavy. So the sport was evolving, the cars were getting faster, but the risks were getting higher too. It's like a constant game of chicken with death.
It was.
But tell me, when did things start to change in terms of safety? When did Formula One start taking driver protection more seriously?
The turning point came in the late 1960s and early 1970s,
Okay.
spurred in part by a series of horrific accidents. There was a growing recognition that something had to be done to improve safety standards.
Yeah, for sure. So what kind of changes did they make? Did they suddenly start wrapping the cars in bubble wrap?
Not quite bubble wrap, but there were significant changes to car design
Yeah.
and track layouts. Cars started incorporating deformable structures to absorb impact energy,
Okay.
and cockpits were strengthened to protect the driver in case of a crash. Tracks were also modified to improve safety. Runoff areas were expanded, and barriers were improved to better absorb impacts.
So they were starting to take safety more seriously, which is good. But let's talk about those sexy wings and spoilers that started appearing on the cars. When did aerodynamics become a major factor in Formula One?
The late 1960s
Ah.
saw the introduction of wings to Formula One cars.
Right.
These wings, inspired by aircraft design, were initially fairly simple devices.
Sure.
But as teams began to understand the power of downforce...
Downforce. Explain that to me like I'm a 5-year-old who just chugged a Red Bull.
Okay, imagine you're holding a piece of paper out the window of a moving car.
Okay, got it.
The air rushing over the paper pushes it upwards, right?
Yeah.
Downforce is kind of the opposite.
So it pushes the car down.
It's the force that pushes the car down towards the track,
Toward the track, okay.
increasing grip
Gotcha.
and allowing it to corner faster.
Okay, so wings basically make the cars stick to the road like glue, allowing them to go faster around corners. Got it. But I'm guessing too much downforce could be a bad thing, right?
Exactly. Too much downforce creates drag,
Drag,
which slows the car down on the straights. It's a constant balancing act. Finding the right balance between downforce and drag is one of the biggest challenges in Formula One car design.
Sounds like a real headache for those brainiac engineers.
Yeah.
So I've got wings, downforce, safety improvements, and a whole lot of horsepower. What's the next big development in this Formula One evolution?
Well, this is where things get really wild. We're entering the era of ground effect, one of the most fascinating and controversial periods in Formula One history.
Ground effect. Sounds like something out of a comic book. What the hell is that?
It's like the car is sucking itself to the track. Literally. Ground effect is a phenomenon that occurs when a car's underside is shaped in a way that creates a low-pressure area beneath the car.
Okay.
This low pressure acts like a giant vacuum, sucking the car down towards the asphalt.
Holy shit, so these cars were basically becoming road-hugging hovercrafts.
In a way, yes.
Crazy.
Ground effect cars were incredibly fast and generated massive amounts of downforce, but they were also very sensitive to changes in ride height.
Right, height.
If the car bottomed out or the skirts that sealed the underbody became damaged, the sudden loss of downforce could be catastrophic.
Okay, so these cars were incredibly fast, but also potentially lethal. Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It was a risky period, no doubt, but the ingenuity and the daring of the engineers and drivers during the ground effect era pushed the boundaries of what was possible in Formula One.
So who were the big players in this ground effect game? Who mastered this black magic of sucking cars to the tarmac?
The team that really pushed the boundaries of ground effect was Lotus.
Lotus.
Led by the brilliant but often controversial Colin Chapman.
Right.
Their Lotus 78 and 79 cars, which featured wing cars.
Wing cars?
Yeah, with side pods shaped like inverted airplane wings, were incredibly fast and dominant in the late 1970s.
Man, those Lotus cars must have looked like spaceships compared to the other cars on the grid. But I'm guessing the other teams weren't just going to sit back and watch Lotus run away with all the trophies, right?
Of course not.
I didn't think so.
Other teams tried to copy Lotus's design,
Sure.
while some went in completely different directions.
Different directions, okay.
One of the most outlandish and controversial examples was the Brabham BT46B, better known as the fan car.
A fan car. You're shitting me, right? Did they actually bolt a giant fan to the back of the car? What kind of bullshit is that?
Well, not a giant fan, but they did incorporate a large fan into the car's design. This fan wasn't there to cool the engine or anything like that.
So what was it for?
Its purpose was to extract air from beneath the car.
So like a vacuum cleaner?
Creating a vacuum, yeah,
Yeah.
and generating even more downforce.
Hold on, that sounds like some shady loophole in the regulations. Did this thing actually work?
It did. Niki Lauda, driving the Brabham fan car, won the 1978 Swedish Grand Prix by a whopping 34 seconds.
Holy shit. They actually won a race with a giant vacuum cleaner strapped to the car. That's insane.
It was a controversial victory.
Yeah, I bet it was.
And the fan car was quickly banned. It remains one of the most innovative and talked about cars in Formula One history.
I can see why. Okay, so we've got ground effect, fan cars, and the Brits still giving Ferrari a run for their money. What's the next chapter in this Formula One soap opera?
Well, the late 1970s also saw the emergence of another groundbreaking technology, turbocharged engines.
Turbo, now you're talking. More power, more boost, more noise.
Exactly.
But weren't turbocharged engines already a thing in other forms of motorsport? Why did it take so long for them to arrive in Formula One?
You're right. Turbocharged engines were already being used in other racing series, but in Formula One,
Yeah.
there were concerns about fuel consumption, reliability, and turbo lag.
Turbo lag. What the hell is that?
It's that annoying delay between hitting the accelerator and the turbocharger spooling up and delivering the boost.
Oh, so like when you floor it, nothing happens for a second?
Exactly. Imagine you're trying to overtake a rival, you stomp on the gas, and nothing happens for a second or two.
Yeah, that's no good.
Not exactly ideal for a high-stakes race.
Not at all. So who was brave enough or maybe crazy enough to bring the turbo to Formula One?
The Renault team took the plunge in 1977.
Renault, okay.
With their RS01 car.
Yeah.
It was a bold move, but it didn't exactly go smoothly at first.
I can imagine.
The car was plagued with reliability issues and was nicknamed the Yellow Teapot for its tendency to overheat.
Yellow teapot, that's hilarious. I bet those Renault engineers were sweating bullets trying to figure out how to stop their turbocharged teapot from boiling over.
I'm sure they were.
Did they ever get it sorted out?
They eventually sorted out the kinks.
Okay, good for them.
And in 1979, they finally tasted victory at the French Grand Prix.
So the turbo was here to stay.
It was a turning point, and other teams soon followed suit,
Makes sense.
realizing that the turbocharged engine was the future of Formula One.
Okay, so the turbo era was officially underway. But how did this new technology change the game? Was it just about more power, or were there other implications?
The introduction of turbocharged engines led to a significant jump in power, with some engines producing over 1,000 horsepower in qualifying trim.
1,000 horsepower.
Oh, shit.
These cars must have been absolute rockets, but I'm guessing all that power came with a price tag, right?
You bet. Turbocharged engines were expensive to develop and maintain. They were also notoriously unreliable, which led to some spectacular engine blowups and a lot of frustrated drivers.
I can imagine.
It was a constant battle to keep those engines running at peak performance.
So it's like having a girlfriend who's a total bombshell but also a high-maintenance nightmare.
Yeah.
You love the thrill, but it costs you a fortune and gives you a heart attack every other week.
That's a pretty accurate analogy. The turbo era was a wild and exciting time in Formula One.
I bet it was.
But it also sowed the seeds for some of the challenges the sport faces today,
Like what?
especially in terms of escalating costs.
All right, so we're in the late 1970s, early 1980s. Ground effect cars are sucking themselves to the track.
Yeah.
Turbocharged engines are screaming their lungs out.
It was a symphony of noise and speed.
And drivers are wrestling these beasts around the circuits like modern-day gladiators. It sounds like a recipe for some epic battles and a whole lot of drama.
It was a period of intense competition,
I bet it was.
both on and off the track.
Oh, really?
We saw the rise of some of the most iconic drivers in Formula One history, like Alain Prost, Niki Lauda, and Nelson Piquet.
Legends.
And the battle lines were drawn not just between drivers,
Oh.
but also between two powerful groups, FISA, the sports governing body, and FICA, the Formula One Constructors Association, which represented the teams.
Politics. Can't escape those power struggles, even in the world of fast cars and champagne showers.
Yeah.
What were these two groups fighting about?
The conflict was largely about control of the sport and, of course, money.
Of course, figures.
FISA wanted to maintain control over the rules and regulations, while FOCA, led by the shrewd Bernie Ecclestone, wanted more say in how the sport was run and how the revenue was distributed.
Sounds like a classic case of the establishment versus the rebels.
Yeah.
Who were the key players in this Formula One power struggle?
On the FISA side, you had Jean-Marie Balestre,
Balestre, okay.
a powerful and often controversial figure who believed in maintaining strict control over the sport.
Right.
On the FOCA side, you had Bernie Ecclestone,
Ecclestone. Yeah, he's the guy who basically turned Formula One into a money-making machine.
a brilliant businessman who would eventually become the supremo of Formula One, transforming it into the global commercial juggernaut it is today.
So how did this FISA-FOCA war impact the sport itself?
It was a turbulent time for Formula One.
I bet it was.
There were threats of boycotts,
Really?
legal battles,
Oh, wow.
and even a rival championship.
A rival championship. That's crazy.
It was a power struggle that threatened to tear the sport apart.
Damn.
But cooler heads prevailed, and the two sides eventually reached a compromise.
They did.
Yeah, and Bernie Ecclestone emerged as the dominant force in Formula One, shaping its commercial future for decades to come.
So Ecclestone basically won the war and became the emperor of Formula One.
Pretty much.
Not bad for a guy who started out selling spare parts.
Yeah.
But let's get back to the cars and the drivers. What were some of the standout machines and drivers of this era?
The early 1980s saw the rise of some incredibly talented drivers.
Like who?
Guys like Alain Prost, Niki Lauda, and Nelson Piquet. These drivers battled it out in some of the most iconic Formula One cars ever built, like the McLaren MP41, the Williams FW07, and the Brabham BT52.
Okay, those names are legendary, but I'm curious about those cars. What made them so special?
Well, the McLaren MP41, designed by the brilliant John Barnard, was the first Formula One car to feature a full carbon fiber composite chassis.
Carbon fiber? That's some space-age shit.
It was revolutionary. This made the car incredibly light and stiff, giving it a significant performance advantage.
So this innovation caught on pretty quickly.
Absolutely. The use of carbon fiber revolutionized Formula One car design. It quickly became the standard material for chassis construction, and it remains so to this day.
Okay, so we've got carbon fiber chassis, ground effect, turbocharged engines, and a whole lot of political drama.
Yeah.
Formula One is clearly entering a new era of technological advancement and off-track shenanigans. But what about the drivers? How did they adapt to these increasingly complex and powerful machines?
The drivers of this era had to be incredibly skilled and adaptable.
Right.
The cars were demanding to drive, the competition was fierce, and the stakes were higher than ever.
Yeah.
Only the very best could handle these beasts and consistently extract the maximum performance.
So it wasn't just about balls and bravery anymore.
No.
These drivers needed a whole new level of skill, precision, and mental fortitude to tame these turbocharged monsters.
Exactly. The demands on the drivers were increasing.
Yeah.
And we were starting to see a new breed of driver emerge, drivers who were not only incredibly talented behind the wheel, but also physically and mentally prepared to handle the extreme G-forces, the intense pressure, and the constant threat of danger.
Okay, so the drivers were evolving along with the cars,
Yeah.
becoming more like athletes and less like daredevils.
Right.
But tell me, who are some of these titans of the track, these masters of speed and strategy, who defined this new era of Formula One?
Well, one of the most intense and captivating rivalries of this era was between Alain Prost, known as the Professor for his calculated and methodical approach to racing, and Niki Lauda, who had made a remarkable comeback after a near-fatal crash in 1976.
Lauda, the guy who basically stared death in the face and said, "Not today, bitch," and then came back to win more championships. That's some badass motherfucker shit right there.
Yeah.
Lauda's comeback was one of the most incredible stories in Formula One history. He was a fierce competitor, known for his incredible determination and his ability to push himself and his car to the absolute limit. And his rivalry with Prost was legendary, a clash of styles and personalities that captivated the world.
Okay, so we've got Prost, the cool and calculating professor, and Lauda, the fearless and relentless comeback kid. What about Nelson Piquet? Where does he fit into this equation?
Nelson Piquet was a different breed of driver altogether. He was a brilliant racer,
Right.
a three-time world champion.
Yeah.
But he was also known for his aggressive driving style and his psychological warfare.
Psychological warfare, what do you mean?
He wasn't afraid to play mind games with his rival,
Oh, see.
to use any tactic necessary to gain an advantage.
Sounds like a real asshole.
He could be, but he was also incredibly talented and successful.
I guess you got to do what you got to do to win. So we've got Prost, the professor, Lauda, the phoenix, and Piquet, the mind master. Sounds like a cast of characters straight out of a Tarantino film.
It was a colorful era.
But tell me, were there any other significant developments in Formula One during this time?
Well, the mid-1980s saw the turbocharged engines reach their peak of power,
How much power are we talking about?
with some engines producing well over 1,000 horsepower.
1,000 horsepower.
Oh.
Jesus Christ. These cars must have been absolute rockets. But I'm guessing all that power came with a price.
You're right. The turbocharged engines were incredibly complex
Yeah,
and expensive to develop.
right.
They were also notoriously unreliable, which led to some spectacular failures and some close calls for the drivers.
So it's like having a high-maintenance girlfriend, stunning to look at, but a real pain in the ass to deal with. But I'm guessing all good things must come to an end. What happened to the turbo era in Formula One?
The turbo era eventually reached its breaking point.
Really, what happened?
The escalating costs, the concerns about safety, and the sheer dominance of the turbocharged engines led the FIA to ban them at the end of the 1988 season.
Wow, so they basically killed the party because things were getting too wild.
In a way, yes.
I see.
The FIA decided that it was time to rein in the turbocharged beasts and bring a sense of balance back to Formula One. They introduced new regulations for naturally aspirated engines,
Naturally aspirated engines.
hoping to reduce costs and level the playing field.
So it's the end of an era, but the innovation doesn't stop, right?
No, not at all.
Formula One is always evolving, always pushing the boundaries.
That's the nature of the sport.
Take me into this brave new world of naturally aspirated engines and the drivers who tamed them.
Well, one name immediately springs to mind. Ayrton Senna.
Senna, the legend. Everyone knows his name, even people who couldn't tell a Formula One car from a fucking shopping cart.
He was a phenomenon.
But what made him so special?
Senna possessed a unique blend of natural talent, unwavering determination, and a deep, almost spiritual connection to racing.
He was like the Mozart of motor racing.
That's a great analogy.
But I'm guessing his rivalry with Prost wasn't exactly a friendly competition.
Their rivalry was one of the most intense and controversial in Formula One history. It was marked by on-track clashes, accusations of dirty driving, and a deep personal animosity that transcended the sport.
Sounds like a real soap opera. Okay, so we've got Senna, the maestro, and Prost, the professor, battling it out for supremacy. Who else was making waves in this new era of Formula One?
Well, the early 1990s also saw the emergence of another talented driver,
Who?
Michael Schumacher. The German driver would go on to become one of the most successful drivers in Formula One history, winning 7 world championships and setting numerous records.
Schumacher, another legend. His name is etched in the history books. But tell me about the cars of this era. What were some of the key technological advancements?
The early 1990s saw the introduction of several electronic driver aids,
Driver aid.
like active suspension, semi-automatic gearboxes, and traction control.
Wow, sounds high-tech.
These innovations further increased the complexity and the performance of Formula One cars.
But I'm guessing these electronic aids weren't universally welcomed.
You're right. Some drivers and fans felt that these driver aids were taking away from the purity of the sport, making the cars too easy to drive, and diminishing the importance of driver skill.
Sounds like a familiar argument. People always complain when technology makes things too easy.
Exactly.
But I'm guessing these debates didn't slow down the pace of innovation in Formula One.
Not at all. Formula One has always been a hotbed of technological advancement.
Right.
Teams are constantly searching for ways to gain a competitive edge,
Sure.
whether it's through aerodynamics, engine technology, or electronic wizardry.
So it's a never-ending arms race. with teams constantly trying to outsmart and outmaneuver each other. Sounds like a recipe for some incredible drama and innovation.
It was a fascinating time to be involved in the sport.
But I'm guessing this relentless pursuit of speed and performance wasn't without its consequences.
Sadly, you're right.
What happened?
The 1994 season was marked by tragedy, with the deaths of Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna at the San Marino Grand Prix.
Man, that's heartbreaking. Senna's death was a loss for the entire world, not just Formula One.
It was a dark day for the sport.
But I'm glad they finally started taking safety seriously. How did these tragedies impact the sport?
The FIA introduced a raft of new safety regulations in response to the 1994 tragedies. These included changes to car design, track layouts, and medical procedures.
Right, so they were trying to prevent something like that from ever happening again.
The sport was forced to confront its own mortality and make fundamental changes to protect its drivers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so safety finally became a top priority, which is a good thing. But what about the performance? Did these safety regulations stifle innovation? Did they slow the cars down?
Not at all. Formula One teams are incredibly resourceful.
They are.
They found new ways to improve performance within the constraints of the new regulations.
Really?
It was a challenge.
I bet it was.
But it also spurred a new wave of innovation.
How so?
As teams sought to find every possible advantage while adhering to the stricter safety standards.
Okay, so it's like a game of chess,
In a way, yes.
with the FIA making moves to improve safety,
Right.
and the teams finding countermoves to maintain performance. Sounds like a fascinating battle of wits.
It was a constant back and forth between the rule makers and the engineers.
But tell me, what were some of the key innovations in car design and technology during this period?
Well, the mid-1990s saw the introduction of grooved tires.
Groove tires, what are those?
They were designed to reduce cornering speeds
For safety.
and improve safety, yes,
Okay,
by reducing the contact patch between the tire and the track surface.
I see.
Teams also continued to develop new aerodynamic concepts,
Like what?
like barge boards and diffusers.
Barge boards, what are those?
They're aerodynamic devices that help to direct airflow around the car.
Gotcha. And diffusers.
They're located at the rear of the car
Okay.
and help to create downforce by accelerating the airflow under the car.
To improve downforce and manipulate airflow around the car, right?
Exactly.
So, groove tires, eh? Sounds like a bit of a compromise between safety and performance.
They were.
But I'm guessing the teams found ways to make them work.
Oh, yeah. Those engineers are like wizards when it comes to finding loopholes and exploiting the tiniest of advantages.
I bet they are.
Absolutely. Formula One engineers are masters of adaptation. They quickly found ways to optimize car setup and driving style to extract the maximum performance from the grooved tires.
Makes sense.
They also continue to push the boundaries of aerodynamics, developing increasingly sophisticated wings, underbody diffusers, and other aerodynamic devices to generate downforce and improve handling.
So it's a constant dance between the rule makers and the rule breakers,
Yeah.
with both sides pushing each other to innovate and improve.
Right.
Sounds like the essence of Formula One. But tell me, who were some of the standout drivers of this era? Who were the gladiators battling it out on the track?
The late 1990s saw the rise of Mika Hakkinen,
Hakkinen, the Flying Finn.
a Finnish driver known for his smooth driving style and his epic battles with Michael Schumacher.
Yeah, I remember his duels with Schumacher.
Hakkinen was a two-time world champion,
He was.
and his rivalry with Schumacher was one of the most compelling chapters in Formula One history.
It was. But tell me what made Hakkinen such a formidable opponent for Schumacher.
Hakkinen was an incredibly gifted driver with exceptional car control and a natural ability to find the limit.
Right.
He was also mentally very strong, which was essential for competing against someone like Schumacher, who was known for his relentless determination and his psychological warfare.
Right, so it was a battle of skill, strategy, and mental fortitude.
Exactly.
Sounds like a heavyweight boxing match on wheels.
It was a clash of titans.
But tell me, how did Schumacher respond to the challenge posed by Hakkinen?
Schumacher, never one to back down from a challenge, raised his game to another level.
He did.
Oh, yeah. He became even more meticulous in his preparation, more aggressive in his driving, and more determined to win. He's a force of nature, and his rivalry with Hakkinen pushed both drivers to the absolute peak of their abilities.
Damn. Schumacher was a machine, a relentless winning machine.
He was!
But tell me more about the cars of this era. Were there any major technological advancements that we should know about?
The late 1990s and early 2000s saw continued advancements in aerodynamics,
Okay.
with teams experimenting with new wing designs, barge board configurations, and underbody tunnels to improve downforce and manipulate airflow around the car.
Right.
Engine technology also continued to evolve,
Yeah.
with teams pushing the limits of power and efficiency.
So it's a never-ending quest for speed and performance, with engineers constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It is.
But tell me, was there anything particularly groundbreaking during this period? Any major innovations that changed the game?
Well, one of the most significant developments was the introduction of traction control systems.
Traction control. What's that?
In the early 2000s,
Oh, yeah.
these systems used sensors and electronic controls to prevent wheel spin and improve acceleration out of corners.
Interesting.
It was a major step forward in terms of car control and performance, but it also sparked further debates about the role of the driver and the increasing influence of technology in Formula One.
Traction control. Sounds like a bit of a safety net for the drivers.
It could be seen that way.
But I'm guessing it also had some serious performance benefits.
Absolutely. Traction control allowed drivers to push the car harder out of corners without worrying about losing control due to wheel spin.
Makes sense.
It also helped to reduce tire wear, which was a major factor in race strategy.
Right. Okay, so traction control was a win-win, both for safety and performance.
It was.
But I'm guessing it also added another layer of complexity to these already sophisticated machines.
You're right. The introduction of traction control systems further increased the reliance on electronics and software in Formula One cars. It also led to more debates about the balance between human skill and technological assistance.
I can see why.
Some drivers felt that traction control was taking away from the challenge of driving,
Right.
while others embraced it as another tool to help them extract the maximum performance from their cars.
So it's a matter of perspective.
It is.
Some drivers see technology as a threat,
Yeah.
while others see it as an opportunity.
Exactly.
But tell me, how did these technological advancements like traction control and advanced aerodynamics impact the sport of Formula One as a whole?
These advancements led to a significant increase in lap times and overall race pace. Formula One cars were becoming faster and more sophisticated than ever before, but this also led to new challenges,
Such as?
particularly in terms of cost control and the widening gap between the top teams and the smaller independent outfits.
Okay, so the rich were getting richer, and the gap between the haves and the have-nots was widening. Sounds like a familiar story in many areas of life, not just Formula One.
It's a common theme in any competitive endeavor.
But tell me, how did this situation impact the competitive landscape of the sport?
Well, it led to a period of dominance by a few teams.
Like who?
Like Ferrari and McLaren, who had the financial muscle to invest heavily in research and development. Smaller teams struggled to keep pace and often found themselves fighting for the scraps at the back of the grid.
So it was becoming a bit of a closed shop,
It was.
with the same teams winning races and championships year after year. Not exactly a recipe for excitement and unpredictability.
No, it wasn't.
But I'm guessing Formula One wasn't about to stand still and let things stagnate.
You're right. The FIA recognized the need to address the issue of escalating costs.
Okay.
And the widening gap between the top teams and the rest of the field. They introduced a series of cost-cutting measures
Cost-cutting measures like what?
and regulations
Okay.
aimed at leveling the playing field.
So the rule makers were trying to rein things in and create a more competitive environment.
Exactly.
What were some of these cost-cutting measures?
These measures included limitations on testing,
Okay.
restrictions on engine development,
Right.
and the standardization of certain components.
So they were trying to limit the areas where teams could spend their money.
The aim was to reduce the financial burden on teams
Oh.
and make it more feasible for smaller outfits to compete.
Makes sense. But I'm guessing these cost-cutting measures weren't universally welcomed. I can't imagine Ferrari and McLaren were too happy about being told to tighten their belts.
Some of the larger teams did push back against these restrictions,
They did.
arguing that they stifled innovation and limited their ability to develop their cars to the fullest potential. They felt that Formula One should always be at the cutting edge of technology, pushing the boundaries of what's possible, even if it meant escalating costs.
I can see their point, but I also understand the need for cost control.
It's a delicate balancing act,
It is.
trying to find the right mix of cost control and technological advancement. But tell me, did these measures have the desired effect? Did they create a more competitive and unpredictable Formula One? To a certain extent, yes, the cost-cutting measures did help to narrow the gap between the top teams in the midfield, but it was still a significant challenge for smaller teams to break into the front-running pack the financial and technological advantages of the bigger teams were still significant.
So it was a step in the right direction, but there was still a long way to go to create a truly level playing field. But while the FIA was wrestling with these challenges, new stars were emerging on the track, drivers who would leave their mark on Formula One and shape the sport for years to come.
That's right. The early 2000s saw the arrival of Fernando Alonso,
Alonso, the Spaniard with the fighting spirit.
a Spanish driver with exceptional car control, a killer instinct for overtaking, and the ability to squeeze every ounce of performance out of any car he drove.
I remember him going toe-to-toe with Schumacher. Those were some classic battles. What made Alonso so special? Was it just raw talent, or was there something more?
Alonso was the complete package. He had natural talent, no doubt, but he also had an incredible work ethic, a deep understanding of the technical side of racing, and a relentless will to win. He was a master of racecraft, able to read a race situation, anticipate his opponent's moves, and make strategic decisions that often gave him an edge.
So he was like a chess grandmaster behind the wheel, always thinking a few moves ahead.
He was a brilliant strategist.
But I'm guessing his rivalry with Schumacher wasn't exactly a friendly game of checkers.
Their rivalry was intense, with both drivers pushing each other to the limit. Alonso's arrival at Renault coincided with the decline of Ferrari's dominance, and he became the first driver to break Schumacher's 5-year grip on the World Championship.
Damn, that's impressive. Dethroning the king, that's got to take some serious balls.
It was a remarkable achievement.
So Alonso was the young gun who shook things up, brought a new energy to the sport.
He did.
But what about Schumacher? How did he react to this challenge from the Spanish upstart?
Schumacher, being Schumacher, didn't go down without a fight.
Of course not. The guy was a legend.
He was a fierce competitor, always striving for perfection, always pushing himself and his team to the limit. But Alonso's arrival signaled a changing of the guard, a shift in the balance of power in Formula One.
Okay, so even legends eventually fade and new heroes emerge.
It's the circle of life in Formula One.
But the story doesn't end there, right? What happened next in this Formula One saga?
Well, the late 2000s saw the rise of another phenomenal driver, Lewis Hamilton.
Hamilton, the Brit with the 7 world championships.
A British driver who would go on to become one of the most successful drivers in Formula One history.
He's a legend.
His arrival marked the beginning of a new era, an era of unprecedented dominance and record-breaking achievements.
I remember when he burst onto the scene, everyone knew he was something special.
He was.
But what was it about Hamilton that made him stand out from the crowd? Was it just raw speed, or was there something more?
Hamilton's talent was undeniable. He had incredible car control, a natural instinct for racing lines, and an aggressive overtaking style that thrilled the fans. But he was also incredibly adaptable, able to adjust his driving style to different cars and different track conditions.
Okay, so he had the talent, the adaptability, the drive to win?
He did.
But I'm guessing his journey to the top wasn't all smooth sailing. There must have been some bumps along the way, some rivalries that tested him to the limit.
Hamilton's career has been filled with both triumphs and controversies.
I bet it has.
He's been involved in some epic battles on the track and some heated exchanges off the track. His rivalry with Fernando Alonso, his teammate at McLaren in 2007, was particularly intense and acrimonious.
A teammate rivalry. That's got to be awkward, sharing a garage with a guy you're trying to beat. What was the beef between Hamilton and Alonso? Was it just professional competition, or was there something more personal going on?
Their relationship was strained from the start. Both drivers were incredibly ambitious and determined to win, and they clashed both on and off the track. It was a clash of egos, a battle for supremacy within the team, and it ultimately led to Alonso leaving McLaren at the end of the season.
Damn, that's some serious drama.
It was.
So Hamilton and Alonso, 2 alpha males, 2 world champions, couldn't share the same sandbox.
They were both too competitive.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It was an explosive partnership.
But Hamilton's story doesn't end there, right? Who else did he go head-to-head with during his reign at the top?
One of Hamilton's most enduring rivals has been Sebastian Vettel.
Vettel.
A German driver who won 4 consecutive world championships with Red Bull Racing from 2010 to 2013. Their battles were epic, with both drivers pushing each other to the absolute limit.
Hamilton versus Vettel. The Brit versus the German. A classic Formula One rivalry.
It was a clash of styles and personalities.
But tell me more about Vettel. What was his driving style like? What made him such a tough competitor for Hamilton?
Vettel was a master of consistency and precision. He was incredibly quick, especially in qualifying, and he rarely made mistakes.
So like a machine,
Yeah.
cold and calculating.
He was also a brilliant strategist, able to think several steps ahead and make crucial decisions under pressure.
So Vettel was the cool and calculated assassin,
You could say that.
the guy who would quietly dismantle his opponents with his speed and his cunning, a real contrast to Hamilton's more flamboyant and aggressive style.
They were very different drivers with very different approaches to racing.
But while these guys were battling it out on the track, what was happening in the world of Formula One technology? Were there any major advancements during this period?
The late 2000s and early 2010s saw the introduction of the kinetic energy recovery system.
KERS.
KERS. Sounds like something out of Star Trek. How the hell does that work?
It allowed cars to store energy generated under braking and use it to boost acceleration. It was a clever way to improve efficiency and add an extra dimension to the racing. So it's like giving the drivers a nitrous oxide button, instant horsepower on demand. That's pretty badass.
It was a significant development, but KERS was just a stepping stone to an even bigger technological leap. The introduction of hybrid power units in 2014.
Hybrid power units. Sounds like Formula One was going green.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm guessing these hybrid engines weren't just about saving the planet, were they? There had to be a performance advantage, right?
Of course. While the hybrid power units did improve fuel efficiency,
Yeah.
their main purpose was to boost performance.
Right.
These engines combine a 1.6-liter turbocharged V6 engine with complex energy recovery systems, generating close to 1,000 horsepower.
Holy shit, 1,000 horsepower from a 1.6-liter engine. That's insane. These engineers are like modern-day alchemists, squeezing ungodly power out of these tiny little engines. But tell me, how did these hybrid power units change the game in Formula One?
The introduction of hybrid power units marked a new era of technological complexity in Formula One. These engines were incredibly sophisticated, with intricate energy recovery systems that harnessed energy from both braking and exhaust gases.
Right.
They were a technological marvel, but they also presented a significant challenge for the teams
Like what?
in terms of development,
Yeah.
reliability, and cost.
Okay, so we're talking about a whole new level of complexity and expense. Sounds like a real headache for the teams.
It was. But I'm guessing the drivers didn't mind the extra power. I mean, who doesn't love a bit more oomph under the hood?
The drivers had to adapt their driving styles to the new characteristics of the hybrid power units.
Mm-hmm.
These engines delivered power in a different way compared to the previous naturally aspirated and turbocharged engines.
Yeah.
They were more efficient, but they also required a different approach to managing energy deployment and fuel consumption.
So it's like learning to ride a wild stallion after years of riding a trusty old donkey, a whole new set of skills required.
Yeah. But I'm guessing the teams that mastered this new technology quickly gained an advantage. Whoever cracked the hybrid code first was going to be in the driver's seat, literally.
Absolutely. The Mercedes team, led by their technical director, Paddy Lowe,
Daddy Low. Okay.
quickly gained a mastery of the hybrid power units. Their engines were more powerful, more efficient, and more reliable than their rivals, giving them a significant performance advantage.
Ah, Mercedes, the Silver Arrows. They dominated Formula One for years with those hybrid engines.
You did.
But what was their secret? How did they manage to get such a head start on the competition?
Mercedes invested heavily in research and development, and they assembled a team of brilliant engineers who were able to push the boundaries of hybrid engine technology. They also had a strong driver lineup, with Lewis Hamilton, already a world champion, and Nico Rosberg, a talented and ambitious driver with a point to prove.
Okay, so it was a combination of brilliant engineering, deep pockets, and a killer driver lineup. Sounds like a recipe for domination.
It was.
But I'm guessing their reign at the top didn't go unchallenged. Surely the other teams were trying to catch up.
Of course. Teams like Ferrari and Red Bull Racing poured resources into their own hybrid engine programs, desperate to close the gap with Mercedes. But for several years, Mercedes remained the team to beat. They were the benchmark, the ones to chase, and their dominance shaped the landscape of Formula One for almost a decade.
Okay, so Mercedes was the king of the hill, ruling the roost with their hybrid power units.
They're the dominant force.
But how did this technological dominance translate into on-track success?
Mm.
Who were the drivers reaping the rewards of this Silver Arrow magic?
Well, Mercedes had two incredibly talented drivers at the helm.
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton, already a world champion with McLaren,
Right.
and Nico Rosberg, a rising star with a family legacy in motorsport.
Interesting.
They were teammates, but they were also fierce rivals.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And their battles for supremacy within the team were some of the most intense and dramatic chapters in Formula One history.
Hamilton and Rosberg. The Brit and the German. Two gladiators in silver armor battling it out for Formula One glory. But tell me, what was their relationship like? Was it all smiles and handshakes, or was there some serious tension simmering beneath the surface?
Their relationship was complex, a mix of mutual respect and simmering rivalry. They were both incredibly talented and ambitious, and they pushed each other to the limit, both on and off the track.
Sounds like a recipe for fireworks. Give me the juicy details. What are some of the defining moments of their rivalry? Did they ever come to blows in the garage?
There were several memorable clashes between Hamilton and Rosberg during their time at Mercedes. One of the most controversial incidents occurred at the 2016 Spanish Grand Prix,
What happened?
when they collided on the first lap, taking each other out of the race.
Damn, a first lap crash between teammates. That's got to be awkward at the next team meeting.
It was a major incident that exposed the tensions within the team.
But I'm guessing their rivalry wasn't just confined to the racetrack. Were they throwing shade at each other in the press conferences too?
Their rivalry often spilled over into the media and the paddock. There were mind games, accusations of favoritism, and a constant battle for the upper hand within the team. It was a fascinating dynamic, and it added another layer of intrigue to the already high-stakes world of Formula One.
So it was a real soap opera with two alpha males vying for the throne.
It was a battle for supremacy.
But who ultimately came out on top in this Mercedes duel? Who was the last man standing?
Well, Hamilton won the World Championship in 2014 and 2015, while Rosberg took the title in 2016 after a season-long battle with Hamilton that went down to the wire. It was a thrilling and controversial season, and Rosberg's championship win was a testament to his talent, his determination, and his ability to withstand the immense pressure of competing against Hamilton.
So both drivers tasted victory, but their rivalry was one for the ages.
It was.
But tell me, what happened after Rosberg's championship win? Did he stick around to defend his title, or did he decide to cash in his chips and walk away from the pressure cooker?
Surprisingly, Rosberg announced his retirement from Formula One just days after winning the 2016 World Championship. He cited the intense pressure and the sacrifices he had made to reach the pinnacle of the sport as reasons for his decision. He had achieved his ultimate goal, and he decided to walk away on his own terms.
Wow. Retiring at the top of your game. Talk about going out with a bang.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing Mercedes didn't just fold up shop and call it a day. They must have found a replacement for Rosberg, someone to partner with Hamilton and keep the silver arrows flying high.
They did. Mercedes signed Valtteri Bottas,
Bottas, okay.
a Finnish driver who had shown promise at Williams, to partner Hamilton for the 2017 season.
Interesting.
Bottas was a solid and dependable driver,
Right.
but he wasn't quite in the same league as Hamilton or Rosberg.
Okay, so Bottas was the new kid on the block, the underdog stepping into the lion's den. How did he handle the pressure of being Hamilton's teammate? Did he crack under the pressure, or did he manage to hold his own?
Bottas' arrival created a different dynamic within the team. He was a less confrontational teammate for Hamilton, and their relationship was more harmonious.
So, less drama.
But make no mistake, Bottas was still a very capable driver.
Okay.
And he was able to push Hamilton at times.
So it was a less explosive partnership, but still a competitive one.
Exactly.
But tell me, did Mercedes maintain their dominance with this new lineup? Were they still the team to beat?
Mercedes continued to be a dominant force in Formula One, winning the Constructors' Championship every year from 2014 to 2021. Hamilton also continued to add to his tally of world championships, winning 6 titles during this period.
Wow. 8 consecutive Constructors' Championships and 7 World Championships for Hamilton. That's an incredible run of success. But I'm guessing their dominance didn't go unchallenged. Surely the other teams were trying to knock them off their perch.
Of course, teams like Ferrari and Red Bull Racing continued to develop their cars and push Mercedes hard. Ferrari, in particular, emerged as a serious challenger in 2017 and 2018, with Sebastian Vettel leading the championship for a significant part of both seasons.
Okay, so Ferrari was back in the fight, with Vettel trying to add to his collection of world championships. But I'm guessing Hamilton and Mercedes weren't about to give up their crown without a fight.
Hamilton and Mercedes responded to the challenge from Ferrari with their trademark determination.
How so?
They developed their car further,
Right.
improved their strategy,
Right.
and Hamilton, never one to back down from a fight, raised his game to another level.
Sounds intense. So it was a real back-and-forth battle with both teams and drivers pushing each other to the limit, but who ultimately came out on top in this epic clash of the Titans? Did Ferrari manage to dethrone the reigning champions?
Hamilton and Mercedes prevailed, winning the World Championship in both 2017 and 2018. Vettel and Ferrari came close, but they ultimately couldn't match the consistency and the speed of Hamilton and the Silver Arrows.
So Mercedes' dominance continued, but I'm guessing their reign at the top couldn't last forever. Every empire eventually crumbles, right? What happened next in this Formula One saga? Who emerged to challenge the Mercedes juggernaut?
Well, in 2019, Ferrari once again looked strong in preseason testing, but their challenge faded as the season progressed. It was Red Bull Racing, with their young star driver, Max Verstappen, who emerged as the most consistent threat to Mercedes' dominance.
Verstappen. The Dutch Lion. He's been making waves in Formula One for a few years now.
He has.
But what made Verstappen such a formidable opponent for Hamilton and Mercedes? Was it just raw talent, or was there something more?
Verstappen is an incredibly talented driver, no doubt about that. He has exceptional car control, an aggressive overtaking style, and a fearless approach to racing. He's not afraid to take risks, to push the limits, and that makes him a very exciting driver to watch.
Okay, so we're talking about raw talent. A fearless attitude and a bit of a wild streak sounds like a recipe for excitement. But Verstappen also had a secret weapon, right? Wasn't he driving a car designed by a legendary engineer?
You're right, Verstappen has been fortunate to have a very competitive car in the Red Bull, designed by the legendary Adrian Newey.
Adrian Newey, the man, the myth, the legend.
Newey is considered one of the greatest Formula One designers of all time, and his cars are known for their innovative aerodynamics and their exceptional handling.
Okay, so it's a combination of natural talent, a brilliant car, and a bit of a daredevil attitude. Sounds like a recipe for success in Formula One.
Mhm.
But how did Hamilton and Mercedes respond to the challenge posed by Verstappen and Red Bull? Were they starting to feel the pressure?
Hamilton and Mercedes responded with their usual determination and professionalism. They continued to develop their car,
Yeah.
refine their strategy,
Right.
and Hamilton, never one to back down from a challenge, raised his game to another level. The battle between Hamilton and Verstappen was shaping up to be one for the ages, a clash of generations, a clash of styles, and a clash of two of the most talented drivers on the grid.
So it was a real duel of the titans, with the old guard battling it out against the young pretender, but who ultimately came out on top in this epic clash. Did Verstappen manage to dethrone the reigning champion?
Hamilton and Mercedes prevailed once again, winning the World Championship in both 2019 and 2020. Verstappen and Red Bull Racing came close, but they couldn't quite match the consistency and speed of the reigning champions, but the writing was on the wall. Verstappen was getting closer, and it was only a matter of time before he would mount a serious challenge for the title.
Okay, so Mercedes' dominance continued, but the cracks were starting to show. Verstappen was knocking on the door, and the 2021 season promised to be an epic showdown. But before we get to that, let's talk about the 2020 season. Wasn't that a bit of a weird year, with the whole COVID pandemic thing throwing a wrench into the works?
The 2020 season was unlike any other in Formula One history.
I bet it was.
The COVID-19 pandemic forced the postponement or cancellation of several races.
Right.
And the season was eventually shortened to 17 races.
Wow, that must have been a logistical nightmare.
It was a challenging time for everyone involved in the sport.
And the races that did take place were held behind closed doors, right? No fans.
The races that did take place were often held behind closed doors without spectators.
Yeah, that must have been surreal for the drivers. Racing in front of empty grandstands, no screaming fans, no podium celebrations, just the roar of the engines and the sound of their own heartbeat.
It was a very different atmosphere.
But I'm guessing the pandemic didn't diminish the intensity of the competition. These guys are still gladiators, even if there's no one in the Coliseum to watch them fight.
The competition was as fierce as ever.
I bet it was.
Hamilton and Mercedes were still the team to beat.
Right.
But Verstappen and Red Bull Racing continued to push them hard. There were several memorable races, including the season-opening Austrian Grand Prix, where Bottas took victory, and the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, where Pierre Gasly, driving for the AlphaTauri team, took a surprise win.
Okay, so even in the midst of a global pandemic, Formula One delivered thrills and surprises.
It did.
But how did the 2020 season ultimately play out? Did Hamilton and Mercedes maintain their grip on the championship? Was it business as usual for the Silver Arrows?
Hamilton and Mercedes did indeed secure both the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships in 2020. Hamilton equaled Michael Schumacher's record of 7 world championships, cementing his place as one of the greatest drivers in Formula One history.
Wow. 7 world championships for Hamilton. That's an incredible achievement. He's in the pantheon of Formula One gods now.
He is.
But I'm guessing his rivals weren't about to let him rest on his laurels. They must have been even more determined to dethrone him in 2021. The hunt for the eighth title was on, right?
Absolutely. The 2021 season promised to be one of the most exciting and unpredictable in recent Formula One history. The regulations had remained relatively stable, which meant that the teams were all closely matched in terms of performance. It was going to be a battle royale, a fight to the finish, and everyone was hungry for victory.
Okay, so the stage was set for a real showdown, with Hamilton and Mercedes facing their toughest challenge yet.
hmm
But tell me, who are the main contenders looking to dethrone their reigning champion? Was it just Verstappen and Red Bull, or were there other wolves circling the Mercedes camp?
The main challengers to Hamilton and Mercedes were Verstappen and Red Bull Racing, and to a lesser extent, Charles Leclerc and Ferrari.
Leclerc, okay.
Verstappen in particular had matured as a driver and had the speed and consistency to mount a serious championship challenge. He was hungry, he was aggressive, and he was ready to take on the champion.
So it was a three-way battle for the title. Hamilton, Verstappen, and Leclerc. Sounds like a recipe for some epic races and a whole lot of drama. Give me the inside scoop. What were some of the key moments of the 2021 season? Did these guys clash on the track? Was there any bad blood?
The 2021 season was a roller coaster ride of emotions, with twists and turns at every corner. The championship battle between Hamilton and Verstappen was incredibly intense, with both drivers pushing each other to the absolute limit. There were several controversial incidents, including a dramatic crash at the British Grand Prix, where Hamilton collided with Verstappen, sending him into the barriers. The season went down to the wire, with the championship being decided in the final race of the season in Abu Dhabi.
Man, that Abu Dhabi finale was one for the ages. I remember watching it. My heart was pounding out of my chest.
It was a nail-biting finish.
But tell me, how did this epic duel for the championship ultimately play out? Who emerged victorious? Did Hamilton make history with his eighth title, or did Verstappen pull off the upset?
The Abu Dhabi Grand Prix was a race filled with controversy and drama.
I know, I was on the edge of my seat.
A late safety car period bunched the field up, and a controversial decision by the race director allowed Verstappen, who was on fresher tires, to overtake Hamilton on the final lap and win the race and the championship.
Hold on, a controversial decision? Sounds like some shady shit went down. Tell me more about this controversy. What happened exactly?
The race director's decision to allow only the cars between Hamilton and Verstappen to unlap themselves, and to do so on the penultimate lap, created a one-lap shootout for the championship. This decision, which was not in line with the usual safety car procedures, gave Verstappen, who had pitted for fresh tires under the safety car, a significant advantage over Hamilton, who was on older tires.
So basically, the race director threw Hamilton under the bus to create a more dramatic finish. That's some bullshit. No wonder Mercedes was pissed off.
The ending of the 2021 season was highly contentious, with Mercedes protesting the result and accusing the race director of manipulating the race to create a Hollywood-style finish.
Sounds like a real shit show. But I'm guessing the result stood. Verstappen is still the reigning champion, right?
Yes, the result stood and Verstappen became the 34th Formula One world champion. But the controversy surrounding the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix cast a long shadow over the sport, raising questions about the fairness of the race direction and the influence of external factors on the outcome of the championship.
Okay, so a new era in Formula One had begun,
Yeah.
with Verstappen at the helm. But the way he won that championship left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. But hey, that's racing, right? Sometimes it's a dirty game. But tell me, how did this new era, with Verstappen as the champion, shape the sport in 2022 and beyond? Did the FIA make any changes to prevent another Abu Dhabi fiasco?
The controversy surrounding the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix forced the FIA to confront some uncomfortable truths about the sport.
Yeah, they really fucked that one up, didn't they?
They conducted an investigation into the events of the race and implemented changes to the race director's role and the safety car procedures to try to prevent a similar situation from happening again.
Okay, so they were trying to clean up their act, make sure the racing was fair.
They also introduced a new set of technical regulations for the 2022 season aimed at creating closer racing and reducing the aerodynamic advantage of the leading car.
Interesting. So new rules, new cars. What were these new technical regulations all about? Did they change the cars in any significant way?
The 2022 regulations led to a radical redesign of the cars with a focus on ground effect aerodynamics.
Ground effect. Isn't that like something we haven't seen in Formula One for decades?
You're right.
Wasn't that back in the days of those crazy wing cars and the Brabham fan car?
Ground effect was a dominant force in Formula One in the late 1970s and early 1980s, but it was eventually banned due to safety concerns.
Right, because those cars were basically death traps.
But the FIA believed that with modern technology and safety standards, they could reintroduce ground effect in a way that would create closer racing without compromising safety.
Okay, so it's like Formula One was going back to the future, bringing back an old idea and giving it a modern twist.
Exactly.
But tell me, how did these new ground effect cars perform? Did they deliver the closer racing that the FIA had hoped for?
The new ground effect cars did indeed deliver closer racing.
Odd.
The cars were able to follow each other more closely through corners, which led to more overtaking opportunities, more wheel-to-wheel battle.
More action, more excitement. That's what the fans want.
The racing was more exciting, more unpredictable, and the drivers were pushing harder than ever.
So the new regulations were a success. Formula One had managed to spice things up and create a more entertaining spectacle.
The 2022 regulations were generally considered a success. The racing was closer, there were more overtakes, and the new cars looked spectacular. It was a new era for Formula One, an era of closer competition, more exciting races, and a renewed focus on driver skill.
Okay, so Formula One was back on track, delivering the thrills and spills that the fans craved. But who were the main protagonists in this new era of ground effect racing? Who were the drivers battling it out for glory? Was it still Hamilton versus Verstappen, or were there new contenders emerging from the pack?
The 2022 season saw a shift in the balance of power in Formula One.
Oh, really? What happened?
Mercedes, the dominant force for the previous 8 seasons, struggled to adapt to the new regulations and found themselves on the back foot.
Wow, so the mighty had fallen.
It was Red Bull Racing, with their star driver, Max Verstappen, and Ferrari, with Charles Leclerc, who emerged as the main contenders for the championship.
Okay, so the old guard was faltering, and new challengers were rising to the top. Mercedes was finally knocked off their perch, and it was a straight fight between Verstappen and Leclerc. Sounds like a classic Formula One rivalry brewing. But tell me, how did this battle for supremacy play out? Was it a close fight, or did one driver run away with the championship?
The battle for the 2022 championship was intense and unpredictable at the start.
Okay, so it was a close fight.
Verstappen and Leclerc traded victories throughout the early part of the season, with both drivers displaying incredible skill and determination.
Nice. So it was a real nail-biter.
There were several memorable races, including the Miami Grand Prix, where Verstappen took victory after a thrilling battle with
Oh, I
Leclerc.
remember that one.
And the Spanish Grand Prix, where Leclerc looked set for victory until a sudden engine failure handed the win to Verstappen.
Ouch, that's gotta hurt.
It was a dramatic turn of events.
But hey, that's racing, right?
Anything can happen.
Exactly. But tell me, how did the season ultimately play out? Who emerged victorious? Did Verstappen defend his title, or did Leclerc steal the crown?
Verstappen ultimately dominated the 2022 season, winning a record 15 races and securing his second consecutive world championship.
Wow, 15 races, that's impressive.
Leclerc finished second in the championship, while Verstappen's teammate, Sergio Perez, took third.
Okay, so Verstappen was the undisputed king of the 2022 season, proving that his 2021 championship win was no fluke. He was the real deal, the dominant force in Formula One. But what about the 2023 season? Did Verstappen continue his reign of terror, or did the other teams manage to close the gap?
The 2023 season saw Verstappen continue his dominance of Formula One, winning his third consecutive world championship with several races to spare.
Damn, the guy is unstoppable.
He and his Red Bull team were simply in a class of their own, with their car proving to be the fastest and most reliable on the grid.
Man, 3 championships in a row. That's some serious domination. Verstappen is clearly in a league of his own right now. But I'm guessing the other teams weren't just sitting back and watching him run away with the championship. Were they making any progress? Were they closing the gap?
The other teams were working hard to close the gap with Red Bull, but they faced an uphill battle.
I bet they did.
Ferrari, despite showing glimpses of speed, struggled with reliability and strategy errors.
Ferrari, always finding a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory.
Mercedes, after a difficult 2022 season, made progress, but were still not consistently on the pace of the frontrunners.
So it sounds like Formula One was becoming a bit predictable, with Verstappen and Red Bull reigning supreme.
It was a challenging season for the other teams.
But I'm guessing there were still moments of excitement and intrigue throughout the 2023 season. Even in a dominant season, there are always stories to tell, right?
The 2023 season, while dominated by Verstappen and Red Bull, still had its share of memorable moments. There were some surprising results, including George Russell's maiden victory for Mercedes at the Brazilian Grand Prix.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And Fernando Alonso's return to the podium with Aston Martin, proving that the veteran Spaniard still had the speed and the skill to compete at the highest level.
Awesome. So even in a season of Red Bull dominance, there were still stories of underdog triumphs and veteran comebacks. Formula One always delivers the drama, one way or another. But tell me, how did the 2023 season ultimately wrap up? Did Verstappen cruise to another easy championship win? Was it a coronation rather than a competition?
Verstappen's dominance in 2023 was such that he clinched the championship with several races to spare. He won a record 19 races out of 22, finishing on the podium 21 times. His team, Red Bull, achieved their sixth Constructors' Championship title, their second consecutively.
Man, 19 wins out of 22. That's utter domination. Verstappen is rewriting the record books. He's in a league of his own right now. But with all this talk of Verstappen and Red Bull, we haven't really addressed the original question that kicked off this whole deep dive. Remember, we were trying to figure out how Formula One went from these scrappy underdog garages to this billion-dollar spectacle where the car seems to matter more than the driver. Have we answered that question?
I think we've seen how the evolution of Formula One, from its humble beginnings to its current status as a global sporting and technological powerhouse, has inevitably led to a situation where the car plays a more significant role than ever before.
So it's not just a recent phenomenon. It's been a gradual evolution over the decades.
Exactly. The technological advancements, the financial resources required to compete at the highest level, and the sheer complexity of the sport have all contributed to this shift.
So it's like Formula One has become this high-stakes game of technological one-upmanship, where the teams with the deepest pockets and the smartest engineers have a distinct advantage. But surely driver skill still matters, right? I mean, you still need a human being behind the wheel to make those split-second decisions, to execute those daring overtakes, to wrestle those beasts around the track.
Absolutely. Driver skill is still crucial.
Good, I'm glad to hear that.
The best drivers can still make a difference, even in a car that's not the absolute fastest. They can extract that extra tenth of a second per lap, make those bold, strategic calls, and pull off those breathtaking maneuvers that leave us on the edge of our seats. But it's undeniable that the car has become a more dominant factor in recent years.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It's almost like the drivers have become secondary to the engineering marvels they're piloting. But surely there are still drivers out there who can overcome a car disadvantage, who can defy the odds and make a name for themselves, even if they're not driving the fastest car on the grid.
There are definitely drivers who stand out. Drivers who possess that rare combination of raw talent, racecraft, and mental fortitude. Drivers like Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, and Fernando Alonso. These guys are exceptional, capable of extracting the absolute maximum from any car they drive.
Yeah, those names are definitely the cream of the crop. But let's be honest, they've all had the privilege of driving for top teams at some point in their careers. What about those drivers stuck in the midfield? The ones who might have the potential but never get the chance to shine because they're stuck with a car that's slower than a donkey on tranquilizers. What hope do they have?
It's a tough situation for those drivers. They might have the talent, but without a competitive car, it's incredibly difficult to showcase their skills and attract the attention of the top teams. It's one of the harsh realities of modern Formula One. The car often dictates your destiny.
So it's like being a brilliant artist stuck with a box of crayons instead of a full set of oil paints. You might have the vision, but the tools are holding you back. It's a damn shame. But tell me, is there anything that can be done to create a more level playing field in Formula One, to give those talented but under-equipped drivers a chance to shine? Is the FIA doing anything to address this issue?
The FIA is constantly trying to find ways to create a more competitive and sustainable Formula One. The budget cap, which was introduced in 2021, is one such measure, aimed at reducing the spending gap between the top teams and the midfield.
Okay, so the budget cap is a step in the right direction. But is it enough? I mean, the big teams still have a huge advantage in terms of infrastructure, experience, and engineering talent. They've got these state-of-the-art factories, wind tunnels that could suck a small country off the map, and armies of brainiac engineers with more degrees than a thermometer. How can the smaller teams possibly compete with that?
You're right. The budget cap is just one piece of the puzzle. It's a complex problem, and there's no easy solution. The FIA is also exploring other measures, such as standardized components, to reduce costs and level the playing field. The idea is to limit the areas where the big teams can spend their money, forcing them to focus on innovation within a more constrained set of rules.
Standardized components. So we're talking about making all the teams use the same gearbox, the same brakes, the same suspension bits. Wouldn't that make all the cars look and drive the same? Wouldn't that take away some of the individuality and the innovation that makes Formula One so special?
It's a balancing act, as with most things in Formula One. The goal is to reduce costs and promote closer competition without compromising the technical and sporting integrity of the sport. It's a difficult challenge, but the FIA is committed to finding solutions that work for all the stakeholders, the teams, the drivers, the fans, and the sport itself.
Okay, so it's a work in progress, a constant evolution of rules and regulations designed to create a more balanced and entertaining sport. But tell me, with all these efforts to control costs and level the playing field, will we ever see a return to the days when driver skill was the dominant factor in Formula One? Back in the day, it was all about the driver, the man behind the wheel, the one with the balls of steel and the lightning reflexes. Is that era gone forever?
It's unlikely that we'll ever see a complete return to those days. Technology has transformed Formula One, and it will continue to play a significant role in shaping the sport. But the FIA's efforts to control costs and create closer racing should give drivers more opportunities to showcase their skills and make a difference on the track. We're already seeing more overtakes, more wheel-to-wheel battles, and more opportunities for drivers to make a name for themselves, even if they're not driving the fastest car.
So there's hope for the drivers yet. They might not be the sole heroes of the story anymore, but they're still an essential part of the Formula One narrative. It's still a sport that demands incredible skill, courage, and determination.
Absolutely. Formula One is a symphony of technology, engineering, and human talent. The drivers are the conductors, orchestrating the performance of these incredible machines and pushing them to the limit. And as the technology continues to evolve, the demands on the drivers will only increase.
Okay, so we've come full circle. We started this deep dive talking about how the car seems to matter more than the driver in modern Formula One, and it seems like that's still the case. But there's hope, right? The FIA is trying to level the playing field, and there are still drivers out there who can defy the odds and make a difference.
Formula One is a sport in constant flux, always evolving, always adapting. The balance between car and driver will continue to shift, but one thing is certain. Formula One will always be a sport that pushes the boundaries of technology, engineering, and human performance. It's a sport that captures the imagination, inspires awe, and delivers drama and excitement like no other.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Formula One history, let's raise a glass to the drivers, the engineers, the teams, and the fans who make this sport such a global spectacle.
Let's celebrate the passion, the innovation, the drama, and the relentless pursuit of excellence that define Formula One.
And let's look forward to the future of this incredible sport. With all its twists and turns, its triumphs and heartbreaks, its heroes and villains, Formula One is a story that's still being written, a journey that's far from over.
Formula One is a sport that will continue to challenge conventions, push boundaries, and redefine what's possible. It's a sport that will continue to captivate and inspire us, and we can't wait to see what the next chapter holds.
And that's a wrap. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into Formula One history, from the wild early years to the high-tech, high-stakes world of modern racing. We've seen how the sport has evolved over the decades, how technology has transformed the cars and the racing, and how the balance between car and driver has shifted.
We've explored the rivalries, the tragedies, the triumphs, and the innovations that have shaped Formula One into the global phenomenon it is today. It's been a wild ride, and we hope you've enjoyed the journey.
If you're a diehard fan or casual observer, we hope this deep dive has given you a deeper appreciation for the history, the technology, and the human drama that make Formula One such a captivating and compelling sport. And who knows, maybe we've inspired you to dig a little deeper, to learn more about this fascinating and ever-evolving world.
So the next time you see those sleek, powerful machines screaming around the track, remember the stories we've shared, the legends we've celebrated, and the passion that fuels this incredible sport.
And until next time, keep the pedal to the metal, the passion for racing alive, and remember, in Formula One, anything is possible.